So not only you dressed Princess Diana, but you actually had an influence on her style.
She said, "Jacques, there's somebody I'd like you to meet." There was Princess Diana right in front of me. It was the time of the supermodels. It was the time when everybody was wearing super short dresses. So she wanted to be in with that look. I get a phone call from her butler and he said, "Jacques, where's the dress?" The dress was literally half made. She was screaming, throwing herself to the ground, crying. This was her way of saying, "I'm going to be a free woman." That was really the last time she was seen in public. She called me and she said, "Diana's dead." My name is Jacques Azagury, and this is the story of how a little boy from Casablanca ended up dressing Princess Diana. My upbringing in Casablanca was absolutely wonderful. It was sunshine and colourful. Everybody was beautifully dressed. And I think that was the start of my influence to design beautiful clothes, basically. My grandfather was from Gibraltar, which made him British, which made my father British, which made me British. So my father wanted to come back to Britain in the early 60s, which is what we did. When we first moved to England, we actually moved to the East End of London. And opposite where we lived, there was a factory making just regular clothes. And I was at primary school, so I must have still been 8, 9, 10. And I used to go into the factory and ask them if they had any bits of fabrics left over. And I used to take those fabrics home and just make shapes and make little things out of them and take them back to show them. And they were really impressed. I decided halfway through the A-levels to leave school. And I went to work for a factory. They were doing outdoor clothes for outdoor work for Dior, well, the big labels of the time. They started sending me out to college one day a week to train. And I thought I wasn't able to go to college unless I had the 3 A-levels and the 10 O-levels or whatever. But I saw one of the tutors, showed her my work. She said, "Well, we'd be happy to take you. And we'll put you straight through to the second year. You don't need to, you can bypass the first year. It seems like you've done a lot of work on your own." From there, I went to St. Martin's School of Art. And while I was at the college, it was the 80s, so it was silk crepe de chine shirts I was making myself. And I went into Brown's, which at the time was probably one of the top stores in the world. And all the buyers from all over the world used to go there to see what Mrs. Burstein was buying for the season, and they would follow her. So I went in there because I used to shop in there anyway. I used to buy bits, and the buyer came up to me and she says, "That's a wonderful shirt. Where did you get it from?" And I said, "Well, I made it." And she said, "Well, would you mind making some for us, for the shop?" So really, while I was at St. Martin's, I had my first wholesale order from probably, one of the most famous stores in the world. What Brown's used to do every year, at the end of the year, they would showcase one designer from all the London colleges. That year they chose me to showcase, and that was a very, very big stepping stone into the world of fashion. So straight away, without any pain, without any PRs, without anything, I was already starting to sell to Harvey Nichols, to Harrods, to Bergdorf's, to Barney's. Basically, in those days, you could just turn up at Harvey Nichols with 5, 6 dresses and ask to see the buyer. You'd be taken to the buyer and they would order from that. Now, that's absolutely not possible now. You'd need to go through 40, 50 people before you actually get to the main buyer. And the same with the press. I'd go to Vogue House and say, "I'd like to speak to Grace Coddington." And they'd say, "Yes, of course, we'll see if she's here." And take me straight up to see Grace Coddington. Now imagine that these days. And from that conversation I'd have a page in Vogue. On my second collection, I joined a group called the London Designer Collections. That was kind of a small elite group of English designers that were making a higher grade of fashion than London was used to. I was showing my New Romantics collection, it was called. And by that stage, Anna Harvey from Vogue magazine, she was an editor of Vogue magazine, was already a fan of mine, and I'd already had a few pages from her. She came on the stand and she said, "Jacques, there's somebody I'd like you to meet." And I turned around and there was Princess Diana right in front of me. Immediately she put me at ease, and we were talking exactly like we're talking now. And while we were talking, she kept on looking to the right-hand side on the rail to one of the dresses that were hanging there. 3 weeks after that, we get a call from the palace saying, "Would you mind if Princess Diana came to visit your atelier?" So the princess arrives, and first thing she does, she goes into the workroom, says hello to everybody, to all the machinists, and then comes back. And of course, she chose the dress that she saw on the stand at the exhibition. It was black velvet with blue stars on it, blue organza that, it had the 80s shoulders. But it was very, very simple. And it was one of the first steps I took to take her away from all the ruffles and sweaters over, her shoulders and the long girdle skirts. It was really frumpy, and it just stood out. It stood out from the way the rest of Europe was dressing. And that was the first dress I ever made for her. And really, she got so much press from it, and everybody said how wonderful and how changed she looked, that she started shopping with me. In fact, that dress sold at the end of last year at auction in America for $1.1 million. It was the most expensive dress sold at auction. I had a big influence on the princess's style. I mean, some people said I was the designer who gave Princess Diana Va-Va-Voom and all sorts of titles, but really I was known for making her dress more internationally, simplifying her way of dressing, and just making her much more modern. Yeah, I think all in all, I didn't make a huge amount of dresses for her. I made about 20 dresses in all, but the really famous ones that I did for her, they're now called the Famous Five, were the ones that I did towards the last years of her life. I would say probably the last 2 years of her life. And that's when she really came into her own. You could tell that she was looking forward to a new life. She was far more confident. She looked amazing. The first of the Famous Five that I made for the princess was it was a two-piece, very short. It was the first time that she'd worn something sort of quite so short. It was a red silk georgette two-piece with tiny bugle beads on them, almost like a cutaway vest top, a zip up the front, and a short skirt, all in the same fabric. It was the time of the supermodels. It was the time when everybody was wearing super short dresses. So she wanted to be in with that look. The protocol for skirt lengths really in the palace was just above the knee, and already we were going 3 and 4 inches above the knee, which was really not acceptable to the royal family. And the zip at the front, she actually wanted to wear it sort of a bit open so that we could see a little bit of the skin there, but we suggested that it wouldn't be a good idea if she did. The next dress was the dress that she wore on the night of the Martin Bashir interview, the famous interview that she did where she was going to talk about Prince Charles and Camilla. And she called me and said, I need a dress. She said, Jacques, I've done this interview which is going to cause quite a stir. It's nothing bad, it's just the way things are at the moment. But when the interview is going out, I'm going to be at a fundraiser, a cancer fundraiser at exactly the same time. And I want something really sort of sexy and very simple. I showed her the dresses, and straight away she chose one. The top was an embroidered lace with satin straps and a very low neckline. But the point was that it was black, because she wasn't able to wear black being a royal, because the royals only wear black for mourning. So this was her way of saying, right, I'm wearing black now, I'm going to be a free woman, and this is my this is my coming out dress. Just to show you how things are fabricated on TV, The Crown showed that incident when she was doing the interview. So they were showing the interview, but at the same time, they were showing Princess Diana at the palace screaming, throwing herself to the ground, crying, when in fact, she was out having a good time at a fundraiser. The next important event that the princess came to see me for was the Red Cross Ball in Washington. We decided to make it red because she looked sensational in red anyway. It was tried and tested. And she said that it was going to be sort of quite a serious talk, so the dress would need to be sort of serious from the front. But then after, it goes into party mode. So we decided to take the back of the dress into a deep V right down to the waist. Just, it was kind of a business at the front and party at the back dress kind of thing. Having said that, she nearly didn't get the dress. I get a phone call from Paul Burrell, her butler, and he said, Jacques, where's the dress? And I said, what dress? And he said, the red dress for Washington, we're leaving at 11:30 this morning. Now the dress was literally half made. I called two of my girls, threw them taxis, said, come meet me at the shop straight away. And both of them were working like lunatics on the dress at the same time, which isn't the easiest thing to do. And we managed to get the dress to the palace at 11 o'clock. Now, one of the most famous dresses of the five is the little blue dress that I made for the princess, which she wore at the Royal Albert Hall for the Swan Lake charity event. She was slightly bronzed and looking really fit, and the colour was sensational. It was a perfect blue, and it was really the colour of her eyes. Again, there was the discussion of the length. So we went as short can be for her, because it was short there and then it was very low at the top as well. So really, there wasn't really that much dress left at the end of the day. But by that stage, she knew what the press would be looking for. So all the pictures of her arriving at the Royal Albert Hall, getting out of the car, she had the handbag there, so of course she wouldn't be showing any cleavage, and she got out of the car sort of sideways so that they wouldn't see. And then she stood up and the dress fell into place. She always got a lot of press, but this really got sort of massive press the next day about how wonderful she looked and how healthy she looked. She was so much in love with that dress, and I knew that her 36th birthday was coming up. And I thought, I'm going to gift her a dress. I'm going to make exactly that dress, but even much more glamorous. We had a very, very fine Chantilly lace that was hand beaded with hundreds of thousands of beads, all black. And I made a long version of that dress for her with the bows, satin straps, and gifted it to her for her 36th birthday. And actually on that night, she was supposed to wear another dress. It was for the Tate Centenary, which was a big event. But she ended up wearing that, I think, probably as a thank you to me. And she sent me the most wonderful letter saying she was overwhelmed when she opened up the parcel. And that was really the last time she was seen in public, wearing at an event, wearing an evening dress. After that, it was just news coverage of her in the south of France and, of course, in Paris. Before she left, we were already working on another dress for her. She was to return to attend a big charity fundraiser again in London. So we were designing her, again, a black dress, but it was going to be even more daring than the other ones. Really Hollywood red carpet, which is what she was kind of veering towards anyway. But yes, sadly, she never got to wear it. She didn't come back from Paris. I was coming back from a club, it was 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And the girlfriend called me and she said, Diana's dead. It kind of didn't get her. She had to repeat it like 4 or 5 times. It was shock, trauma, it was all the things you can imagine. She was somebody that I thought I would kind of know into old age. Of course, I went to the funeral and everybody was there. You know, Nicole Kidman, Tom Cruise, Valentino, Pavarotti. And the whole thing really seemed surreal. And I kind of held it until the coffin came in. And that's when I really sobbed. As a designer, working with the princess obviously was wonderful. It gave me a very high profile. Even till last year when I retired, people that came into the shop would always say to me, what was she like? You know, and oh, we loved that dress, or we loved that dress. I had the most wonderful career. You know, I met the most amazing people, visited the most wonderful places, you know, went to the Palace, Buckingham Palace, number 10 several times. You know, so it was, you know, things that were really, would not have happened had I not been a designer.